welcome everybody. As I was saying, some of you are joining us for the first time. Some of you have been a part of our entire series. We're doing a 7-part series on grief and loss and playing the hands you are dealt. And it's our hope that these sessions will help you play the different hand that you are living with loss and feeling grief, and that we're hoping that we can help you through some of these hard times with some tips and pointers. Today's session is creative outlets for grief, and so we're really excited to have a unique panel talking to us today about things like animals, gardening, music, writing, and photography. We have 3 sessions left, so just as a quick reminder, on May 13th, we will be having a session on financial resiliency. On May 20th, we'll be talking about mental health, substance use, and suicide. And we'll wrap the series up on May 27th with a talk on outdoor physical activity and why being outside and moving around is good for us. Before we get started today, I just want to remind people to keep their microphones muted. We're happy to see your faces if you're willing to keep your video on. And because we have a panel with 5 different topics, we thought it best that we wait until the end to ask questions. That way each speaker has their full 10 or so minutes to be able to talk and present. However, if you've got just this burning question you have to ask as soon as the speaker ends, please just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask that burning question. Otherwise, Mindy and I will monitor the chat box and the Facebook groups to make sure we get questions answered at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to announce or introduce our first speaker, and this is Alistair Bane. And this is a special one for me because I heard Alistair's story on the Moth Hour podcast and was able to reach out to him to see if he'd be interested in talking to our group and extension, and he was and is with us today. Alistair Andrew Bane is an Eastern Shawnee writer, storyteller. He's an artist, he's a quilter. His work has been featured, like I just said, on the Moth Hour and on Moth main stages. And I'm actually going to put a link into the chat box on the Moth Hour so you can hear the story that I heard of Alistair's. And we both would encourage you to listen to some of the other stories on the Moth Hour as well. But his stories have actually been published in the Reader's Digest, as well as the book Alone Together, Love, Grief, and Comfort in the Time of COVID-19. He was an artist in residence for the Denver Art Museum Native Arts Program in 2016. He spends his free time volunteering with foster feral dogs and dogs with behavioral issues. And he says that working with dogs and horses throughout his life, he's learned a great deal from them, just about healing and resilience. So we're thrilled to have Alistair talk to us a little bit about his work and the power of what his work with animals has done. Welcome, Alistair.
Hello, thank you. I'm really happy to be able to be here today. And I know sometimes it's hard for us to decide we're going to talk about grief and loss, but I think it's an important thing because that's going to be a path to healing. And anybody that knows me knows I have kind of an unusual little hobby, which is that I foster dogs who are either feral or have behavioral issues. And a lot of my friends are kind of like, why do you do that? And by the way, if you hear any barking, that may be why in the background. But anyway, throughout my whole life, animals have played a significant role in my path to navigating life and being able to heal. And it's partly because as a child, I was very shy and had a lot of trouble being able to connect sometimes to other human beings. And so animals were a way that I could learn about life. I'm Eastern Shawnee, and grief and loss is something my people know about. We were removed to Oklahoma, and by 1905, there were just 68 people in my tribe left. And we were mourning not only the individual losses of people that we loved, but also an entire way of life. Our language, our culture, and all of that were in jeopardy. And over the years, that kind of created a situation that today we talk about as generational trauma. And growing up, I had a father who was very much like me, that I loved very much, but who was also an alcoholic. And I lost him at a very early age. And I really wanted in my life to be able to understand more about resilience and about healing so that I would be able to help other people. But I had to learn to be able to help myself before I did that. And my dog is acting up. Sorry. But anyway, in doing that, I began fostering dogs in about my mid-20s, when I was at a point in my life where I was realizing that I really needed help navigating my own childhood grief and loss and trauma, because what I'd been trying on my own wasn't really working. And I got a lot of help through different ways that we usually talk about, like therapy and self-help groups for people with addiction issues. And those were good. But what also happened at that time was that a friend of mine who was also in recovery asked me to adopt a dog who was an epileptic chow dog with fear aggression issues. And it kind of seems counterintuitive that if you've got a lot on your plate in life, that you'd adopt a dog that had all of these issues. But that dog provided two things for me. And one was when I woke up in the morning, I had something else in life that was dependent upon me. And if I was on my own, and I woke up in the morning, I was depressed, it was tempting to just lay in bed and skip breakfast. But because I had that dog, I knew I needed to get up and feed him breakfast and take him for a walk. And in doing that, it began to give me the actual things I needed to heal. Good nutrition, exercise, purpose in life, things to enjoy. And I also began to be able to watch that dog and watch his process of healing and see how did that evolve for him, what worked. And one of the things I saw in that dog is a healing and going through grief. Sometimes when we read about it and we see, for example, the stages of grief, it looks neat and clean and linear. And I'd found myself in life thinking, but I have good days and bad days, and maybe this isn't working. And I realized in watching that dog that coming through grief isn't linear, and it's different for everyone. And we can have a whole bunch of really good days, and then one day where it's not so good. And that doesn't mean it's not working. It doesn't mean we're failing. It doesn't mean we're doing it wrong. It just means it's our own journey. And that dog helped me so much and helped my life evolve so much that as I got older and I got healthier and got better, I began working with rescue groups so that I could kind of pay back to dogs. And in the last 15 years, I've fostered over 53 dogs. And all of these dogs were dogs that other people kind of didn't think there would be hope for. But all of them have gone on to be members of families. Some are service dogs. And it's really rewarding to be able to see them do that. And in watching them, one of the things that I've seen is for my people, we look at human beings or animals as having four parts: the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And I looked at with dogs what they needed in each of those ways and realized it's very much the same for human beings. That in a physical sense, we need a safe environment. We need good nutrition. We need exercise to get us moving and get out there and help our body to be able to produce the chemicals in our brain that will help us heal. And mentally, we need structure and stability and people around us that we can feel safe with. And emotionally, it helps us to have things every day that are meaningful to us. Now, for a dog, those can be simple things like going to the park and playing fetch. For human beings, it's so individual. I've had friends who have come through grief in this last year of COVID by cooking. I have a friend that's cooked for everyone after she lost her spouse to COVID. I do my dog thing. Other people, it's music. Other people, it's reading or writing, but something that has meaning. And that helps the last part of us, our spirit, the essence of who we are as human beings, be able to love ourselves and learn to nurture ourselves. And that is really what dogs have done for me. And I kind of believe that in the universe, there's always a synchronicity to things. And right after last week, I said that I'd come and speak on this panel. On Saturday morning, one of my own dogs, who was quite elderly, I woke up and she was not doing well, and we had to take her to the vet and help her across. And going through that process with her, I realized that over the years, all of this work I'd done with dogs had really prepared me for that. And it was an interesting situation because I'd just taken in a new foster and he had lost his owner and was struggling with that. And I was really worried about my other dog, Cuddles, who was very bonded with the dog that passed away. And when I came home, Cuddles knew Snowbell wasn't coming back. And I watched my foster dog, who had lost his owner, who understood grief, suddenly change his attitude. And he spent the whole day following really close to her. And he didn't attempt to try to get her to play or push her too much. He was just there for her. And it reminded me that part of going through grief is nurturing each other. And to be able to look at a person and know that what we need may be different than what they need, but to simply be there in their space, waiting for them to be ready to reach out. And in that way, all of those things I've learned through working with animals. And if you're going through grief right now, maybe taking on a pet is not for you, but even if you don't want to take on that responsibility right now, if you just walk outside of your house, you'll see nature, you'll see animals, you'll see them interacting and going about their daily lives. And sometimes that can help us ground us back into a place where that cycle of grief that we're experiencing in our mind can be interrupted by looking outside of ourselves and slowly being able to move back to a place of experiencing life and feeling joy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Alistair. There's so much for us to think about and process with all that you just said. And I agree, you might not be a pet person yourself. I just saw your little four-legger pop up. But to be able to go out there and just watch nature, to listen to it, even if it's just watching the ducks interact on the water, there's a lot of power to that, I think, as well. Any burning questions that someone needs to unmute for? Okay, again, I think that was lots to think about. Our next panelist is Erin Batkiewics, and we're thrilled to have Erin with us as well. She's a board-certified music therapist at Wellness Music Therapy Center in Lexington. She specializes in the use of evidence-based music interventions to enhance emotional expression during mental health and substance abuse treatment in particular. And so we're thrilled. She's a graduate of the University of Kentucky, and did a lot with her research on songwriting to address grief and loss. So Erin, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. Can everyone hear me? Can y'all hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, Amy. I was lying in a hospital bed when I decided I wanted to be a music therapist. I was in college, but a nurse looked at me and thought I looked young, and she assigned me to the pediatrics unit. So it's really funny when, as a 19-year-old, I was getting visits from Santa every day or getting weighed on this giant giraffe scale that you can see right here. I was surrounded by bright colors and crafts and a great staff and my family, but I really honestly felt so alone and so scared and very vulnerable. And really, when I look back on it, I was grieving. I was grieving the loss of my health at the time. I was grieving the loss of normalcy, like so many of us have experienced this year. I was grieving the loss of my freshman year of college. And when I really thought about what do I need right now to help me in this moment, my heart kept saying music. I know that music has always been a safe place for me to not only find comfort, but to also be able to express and sort through what I'm feeling. And so I was shocked to find out that there was actually a career called music therapy, and that it was an allied healthcare profession, just like speech therapy or occupational therapy, and that I could get my master's at the University of Kentucky in music therapy. So it was there that I got my training. I learned that music therapy started in World War II when they brought musicians in to sing to injured veterans. And they were seeing a lot of really great recovery times and just spiritual resilience from these soldiers. And the doctors were saying, we want musicians here all the time. So that's when the field and the career of music therapy was born. We are trained, just like what our name sounds like, music therapists. We're trained as skilled musicians, but also we know that music brings up a lot of complex emotions. So we need to be trained in counseling skills as therapists so we can hold a safe space for our clients as they experience through music. As Amy said, we use evidence-based interventions like songwriting or instrument play, singing, music relaxation, all to help our clients accomplish goals that aren't musical. We're not training anybody to go on The Voice or American Idol. As you can see in this picture, I'm no longer the one in the hospital bed. I'm helping a little girl who is about to go to a procedure. I'm using music to lower her blood pressure, to help her cope with her anxiety and to process the emotion she's feeling in that moment. So we use music in so many different ways to meet the needs of people in all different settings. Because of my experience in the hospital, I wanted to study the effect of music on grief for my master's thesis at UK. My friends thought I was a little weird. Why are you spending all this time studying grief and death and loss? But the lessons that I learned during that time, I take with me to every single client that I see. And I've also had to use a lot in my own life, especially in the past year. One aspect that was really important for me to learn was that we often associate grief with death, and death is such a painful experience. But grief is a response to any loss. Sometimes those losses aren't tangible. Sometimes they're more symbolic. Sometimes we label them big. Sometimes we label them small. But I think as we saw this past year, they can still be extremely painful, and it's important to validate them. When I go to work in hospice, I expect to be addressing grief as I'm using music to be a soundtrack as someone transitions from this life. I know that the family's going to be there often and we're going to be addressing this. But when I work in a psychiatric facility, when I work in drug rehab, there are mounds and mounds of grief that we have to work through and come through. Just recently, there was a mom I was working with in drug rehab who was missing her son's senior prom because she was there getting treatment. And she said, I don't know why I'm so upset. Nobody died. And I said, yeah, but you're grieving. It's important for us to recognize that grief comes even when it's not a death that we've experienced. Also, touching on kind of what Alistair said, it was really eye-opening to learn that grief is not only an emotional response. We often associate grief with sadness and anger and denial, like he said, but grief is also experienced in our bodies and our spirits and our minds. And as a therapist, it's really important for me to be able to address that with my clients, but also to address that within myself. My mentor a few years ago said, to live well, we have to be able to grieve well. This statement really blew my mind. Is there a way to get good at grief? Because if so, I want to. I have seen that we're going to experience so many losses in our lives, and I want to be able to learn to be better at grieving. Whenever I go into different populations, I ask my clients, who was ever taught to grieve? And most of them say, I was never taught how to do this, at least not in a healthy way. I feel ill-equipped to do it. So therefore I numb, or I repress, or I turn to unhealthy ways to cope with it. So I think just educating on how to grieve well, how to grieve in a proper way. I see a society where we become very uncomfortable with emotional pain. And so often we try to turn things positive really quickly without fully experiencing. I always say to heal it, we have to feel it. The existence of the feelings is not necessarily the problem, but it's the resistance of the feelings that can cause emotional problems. What my research showed was that people who expressed every feeling accompanied with the grief fared much better in the long term than people who numbed it, suppressed it, or even tried to make it positive too quickly. So those people that kind of pushed it down, they were more at risk for addiction, for suicidality, but even for heart disease and cancer. So one of the most important things I can impart with you today is to really make sure that you're expressing everything that's coming up with you in the grief. Music can help us do that because it stimulates the amygdala, or the part of our brain that processes emotion. How many times have you heard a song and your eyes filled with tears, or you became very angry, or you felt more alone than you've ever felt in your life? You know how at Disney World you can buy that pass where you can cut the line and go straight to the ride? I think that's why, as a therapist, I love using music. It's that fast pass to the heart. We can skip the rumination, the overanalyzing, the shame cycles of our mind and go straight for the feelings where we really need to heal and process. Music also stimulates the hippocampus, the part of our brain that stores memories. How many of you can hear a song and you are back in high school? Like, you can literally feel it with every part of you. How many of you learned your ABCs through a song? Music really stimulates that part of the brain that stores memories. So if there are memories and feelings that are uncomfortable that we've been burying, music very quickly will grab those and pull those up to the surface where we have to face them head on and process them. The second way music can help us is just like what Alistair was saying, that grief is a very physical experience as well. A lot of times when we're grieving, we're also experiencing trauma and high stress, and our body will be very affected by that. How many times have you grieved and you either couldn't sleep or all you wanted to do was sleep? You couldn't eat or all you wanted to do was eat. So grief is a very physical experience. When we listen to music that we like, what it will do is send a signal to our brain. Our brain under stress is very hypervigilant. It's always scanning for stress. We get in that fight, flight, or freeze. Music sends a signal to your brain that you're safe. Because if I was in danger, I wouldn't be singing this Fleetwood Mac song right now. I wouldn't be tapping on this drum. It sends that signal to you to let you know you can kind of calm down. What it's doing is increasing the production of dopamine and serotonin and endorphins in your brain. But we know from research, it's also decreasing cortisol levels in your blood, the stress chemical that can have really, really bad health effects on our immune system. So music we like is actually decreasing that level in our body. And think about how your body entrains to your environment. If I go in downtown Lexington and there's a lot of traffic and people are cussing me out and honking, my heart rate and blood pressure are going to go up. If I'm at the beach, they're going to go down. It's the same effect with music. If my grief is causing me a lot of fatigue and depression, I can use something upbeat to really get my body going, to really get me out of bed and do the things I need to do. If I'm not sleeping, having a lot of anxiety, slow, relaxing music can really bring down the blood pressure and heart rate and help me to get the rest that I need during that time. Grief is also social. Sometimes it's when we need people the most, but we really don't feel like interacting. We feel raw and vulnerable. So music is a way that we can communicate with each other and connect. Have you ever heard a song and you thought, I could have written those lyrics? That's exactly what I'm going through right now. Music can help us feel less alone. Then a lot of my teens, they don't want to share with their parents how they feel. They don't feel comfortable, but they will print out lyrics and give it to them and say, this really describes how I'm feeling. So hopefully after the pandemic, we can be back at concerts, choirs, bands, making music together, singing together, or just listening to it together can really connect us. Just like Alistair said, grief really affects us on a spiritual level. So it can hinder or sever our connection to something greater than ourselves. It can really put us in a place of despair where we're not willing to take the risk of hope. And so I like to call the songs that remind me my purpose, my meaning, they're my hope anthems. I worked with an 18-year-old who had cancer, and she had me sing Let It Be to her every single day. Her doctors were having a lot of trouble figuring out her diagnosis and her treatment plan. And she said, I want to remember that line, there will be an answer, let it be. That guides me back to my resilience. That comforts me. And it also helps me to practice that radical acceptance. So when you're grieving, I hope you can find some of those hope anthems, the words that remind you to keep going. And when you've lost a physical connection with somebody, music can give you that emotional or spiritual connection with that person. When you can't get that physical connection, it can be very powerful. I hope what this presentation reminded you of is that music has been there for you since you were born, and you were rocked and sung to be comforted. And as I've seen in my work with hospice, it can be there for you all the way to the very end. It can be a warm blanket wrapping you up and comforting you as you grieve. Or as this lyric says, it can wake you up to the emotions that you might need to face and process and feel in order to heal. But just like this song, Let It Be says, I hope that music can be a part of your grief journey to bring you into that place of acceptance that you need to heal. Thank you all.
Wow, Erin, that was amazing. Thank you so much. Again, like with Alistair, so much to think about and process. And I'm glad to have a different perspective on music therapy as well, because I think there are some people who might make an assumption that you have to be musical or you have to play, and music doesn't necessarily have to be that I play the guitar. It can be just by listening and feeling it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It's kind of weird. I know these transitions aren't that smooth to go to our next panelist, but we're going to keep moving because there's so much more to learn. And so now we're going to talk about journaling and writing as an expressive outlet. And so with us today is Allison Smith. Allison is a PhD candidate in the Department of Family Sciences here at the university. She is also a marriage and family therapist working in private practice. And her practice specifically focuses on helping adult individuals and couples with a variety of concerns that might include things like depression, anxiety, relationship issues, intimacy issues. But in her free time, I will share, as she wrote on her bio for me too, that she does like to play the guitar. And I believe, Allison, that you've talked in a podcast about having a grandparent's guitar, I think maybe your grandfather's, and what that means to you in a different way too. And you also do a lot with yoga and different types of expression. But thank you for being here today to discuss the ways in which writing, again, can promote a safe space to explore emotions.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. So as Amy introduced, I'm going to be talking about grief journaling today. So just really focusing on how to help you process your feelings through whatever type of grief. A lot of times we talk about grief in terms of death and dying, but as a therapist, this is through the loss of friendships, divorces, things like that. So I think journaling in general is something that I encourage all of my clients to do, especially through the process of therapy, just so you can kind of track what you're going through. And I think it can be really powerful. And so kind of tying into what Erin said, journaling or writing can help you express. And so as she highlighted in her presentation, expression over suppression, this is really going to be the goal of grief journaling. Can be really a nice private safe space for you to process your loss and how that's impacted you. And it can help specifically in the healing process. And it can be helpful processing things that maybe you don't feel comfortable sharing to other people or are realizing, because as sometimes when you're expressing things to somebody else, you can kind of worry about how they're going to perceive that, or you're kind of filtering what you're saying just as a result of communicating with somebody else. So sometimes journaling can provide you that space to really process on your own and not have to worry about how it's going to be perceived by somebody else. And I really want to stress that if you are going to be journaling about your grief, opening up and just really writing from your heart and letting those emotions flow can be the most powerful part of this experience. And just really, I don't know, letting yourself kind of emotions that so often we. So I'm going to talk about 4 practice steps to starting a grief. Anyone who's watching is interested. You can have some little nuggets of information. So I'll go into each of these in a little bit more detail, but you're going to want to choose your journal. You're going to want to decide when and where to journal, and then you're going to let it flow. So I'll talk about each of these specifically. So first, with choosing a journal, you may want to purchase a new journal. So I know a lot of stores have really beautiful, leather journals, or maybe you just want a regular notebook, and that's fine. Or some people want to do, just loose leaf paper in a binder. Or maybe you're somebody that doesn't really like to handwrite. You want to keep a digital, that's more comfortable digital journal. Some of my clients keep a journal in the notes on their notes app. People like to do that because it's anywhere. So if they're somewhere and something comes up or something distressing, and kind of that notes page and just that is there in that moment. And with the digital, if you're a little bit worried about privacy, so with journaling, we don't want to be people are going to think about what we're writing. So sometimes people are worried someone else cross that. So a digital, you could document, or I think there are even apps that are password protected into. So that's an option. And there's also a guided grief journals you can find. And so there are some specifics that you're experiencing, and they have maybe about we can't access. So deciding when to journal. So you want to consider when you feel most comfortable. If you're a morning person, maybe you want to write. Maybe you're someone who weekends. So perhaps it's a little too strong on a work day, right? When you'll have time to process. So you really want to be able to invest and engage in that time, and try to find a time when you're not going to be interrupted by other people, because as I've kind of talked about so far, you don't want to worry about other people interrupting this process. So you want to have, kind of a safe space for yourself. And even a few minutes a day can have benefits. So maybe if you're one of those people that, likes to do it in your notes section of your phone, that can be something that you can do just a couple of minutes a day. And Harvard based multiple, so even if it's just a couple of minutes a day, it can be very powerful. So deciding where to journal. So you also want to consider where you feel most comfortable writing. So again, you want it to be a space where you're not going to be interrupted. Maybe it's finding a meaningful spot in your home. Maybe it's outside if you're somebody that's more comfortable in nature. As Alistair brought up earlier, maybe you feel connected in nature, and that's a place that you would like to, feel more connected with your loved one. So you want to feel super, safe exploring those emotions, because as we've all kind of stressed so far, you want to be able to express that. So you want to be in a spot where you can really just let it out, whether it's positive or negative. And some people like to find a spot that feels connected to their loved one. You had a still place. And some people like to connect to a place and find a spot to write where it's a meaningful spot that they shared with their loved one. And also you might want to create a nice ambiance for yourself. So turn on some soft music, as Erin talked about, the connection that your brain can make with music. So maybe it's music that you shared with your loved one. You want to really want in a space where you let it go. And finally, for the actual process of journaling, you want to really quiet that inner critic. Particularly with critical, or correct, let it out. If you're correct or yours, you want to judge it, come out how it does, and that's the access those deeper. So it's really more powerful to simply free write and just allow whatever it is to come up. And the goal is really to uncover underlying emotions or distressing emotions that you're not aware of or that you are, trying to suppress, because it is uncomfortable sometimes to go there, but it's really important to kind of access those spaces so that you can let yourself and emotions will surprise. That's totally okay. The upsetting, some feel powerful, self, go where the journaling takes you. So some tips. So really be open and honest with yourself. The goal is to write for you, not for other people. So really just trying your best not to worry about how it's coming out. Focus on your feelings, focus on that experience, because that's where you're going to get the most benefit. Have patience with yourself, especially for somebody that struggles with writing. Start simple. It doesn't need to be, the best piece of writing you've ever done. Just let yourself start writing and start accessing those emotions. Again, don't focus too much on what it looks like, the spelling, grammar, punctuation. It does not have to be perfect. Write about anything that comes to your mind. Spontaneity can be really great and can lead you places that maybe you were trying to avoid, or lead you to things that you were unaware were impacting you. Write about how you feel and why. And then maybe write for a couple minutes a day, a few days a week, or however often. So for some people, you can struggle in writing. You blank, how am I supposed to start doing this? So writing can be really, really helpful. So you can, there's a lot of prompts online, and listening uses Pinterest. You can search in their grief prompts, and so many with options there, but I remember when. So if you want to write about a specific memory that you have with the loved, search in if you want to write about a specific one, or this is what I want to tell you today, or this happened and I wish writing about a happy memory. My happiest memory of you is, or even writing about lessons that you learned through your grief process. And as I stated earlier, there are specific journals that are full of, they're guided grief journals. So if that's common to you, then that's something that you do. And so some people want to share their writing with others, and but if you something and you feel particularly pulled to share that with other people, there are options to do that. So there are in-person or online support groups, so grief support groups. These can be really safe spaces for sharing writing, particularly with other people who might, kind of get what you're going through. And some people feel a sense of, validation from reading other people's writing or hearing how other people are feeling. So that could be, something that you may want to do. But you really want to focus on only sharing what you feel comfortable with, and not really focusing on that as the point of the writing in general. I had a client who shared, who lost someone during, due to COVID, and wrote a Facebook post. Like they, wrote this big kind of, entry on what their loved one meant to them, and shared it on Facebook. And so many people in their life came to them and said, that was really amazing getting to read about how you felt about that loved one. And so You could even do something like that if you didn't want it to be anonymous and you wanted to share with people in your life. Something like that is an option too. I think the key point here is that journaling can be very powerful for accessing some of those emotions that are otherwise pretty difficult to express, and that it's really not that difficult to get started. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Allie. You gave us a lot to think about, and I believe we've got some information releases that follow up on that as well, and even a publication on writing through grief for extension. So thank you for highlighting that and talking about it and the ways it can be helpful and safe expression of emotion. Our next speaker is Jann Knappage, and we're again thrilled. We're thrilled to have all of you guys, but we're thrilled to have Jann. She has a passion, a real passion for nutrition and agriculture and food system work. And this passion has developed through a lot of different academic and professional experiences. If I read your bio correctly, Jann, before you took this current position at UK as a food system specialist, you were a teacher for health and wellness and agriculture. You were a project manager to a high school garden program, which had a cute name. I think it was Inch by Inch or something like that. You were a coordinator for Farm to Table for the Community Farm Alliance and traveled all over the Eastern Kentucky counties, looking at ways in which you can promote local food, coordinate farmer education. You've collaborated with government, academic, and other Kentucky agricultural organizations. And you even spent some time in Liberia working on child nutrition. So we're thrilled that you're taking time out of your busy schedule today to talk to us specifically about gardening and how that can be an outlet for grief. So welcome, Jann, and thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. And I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to invite you all to step into my garden. So I live in the Red River Gorge area, and I garden on some borrowed land of some friends. So this is about 15 minutes from my house, and we just got things in the ground. And so on top of my work with extension, working on therapeutic gardens, I also am an avid gardener myself. And I truly, truly believe in the healing powers of the garden and just everything that comes with being outside and being in nature. So just to walk you through what's in my garden right now, I have all sorts of greens in there, potatoes planted, strawberries, carrots, and onions. And then I have plenty of things in my greenhouse ready to go in, but with the rain this week, we were a little bit stalled. So I just thought that, I'd put this image up there and just kind of, let you all experience a little view of my garden and just to start out. And what I want to share with you all is that there are very formal ways to talk about therapeutic gardens and horticulture therapy, but what you need to know is that any garden can be therapeutic, and a garden can take many, many shapes. So you can have 3 5-gallon buckets on your back porch, and that is a garden. You can have, 5 raised beds in your backyard, and that is a garden. You could have herbs on your windowsill in your kitchen, and that is still a garden. And then you can have something like I do, where it's a field that is tilled up and I'm planting directly into the ground, and that is also a garden. So know that we are not limited to our space, and that gardens are really adaptive to our needs. And so a big part of horticulture therapy or therapeutic gardening is just meeting the needs of the person or the people that are going to experience the garden. So know that whether you live in an apartment or you live and you have 5 acres, you can experience the benefits of gardening. So all of us had a collective thing to grieve over the last year plus, and that was living through a pandemic, and we are currently still doing that. So it was nice to hear, I believe it was Erin had said previously in the presentation, we think a lot about loss and losing a loved one, but grief can have many, come in many forms. And I think that's a collective grief that we've all had. And something I found through my extension work was that so many folks were turning to gardening. They were turning to it for food security and to, to grow some of their own food, but then also just to have a way to cope. They were going to be home more, they're going to have more time. So what can I do at home that's going to be something that for myself is beneficial, for my family is beneficial, or maybe my neighbors. And so we saw a real big uptick in gardening in the last year, and it has continued into this season as well. So what are the benefits to gardening? If you go on Google and you type in, benefits to gardening, you are going to get pages and pages and pages from universities to, like online magazines, to personal blogs about the benefits of gardening. And so I could go on for way longer than 10 minutes, just my personal experience, and then also just like the data that is out there. But I thought I would just start with a short list that I pulled together of ones that I just really think highlight what gardening can do for someone beyond just having something beautiful to look at, having some food or some herbs to, collect and use in your meals. So gardening is known as just a self-care mechanism. And so I know that's a really vague term that's used a lot, but it is just a form of doing something for yourself. Gardening has been known to build confidence and self-empowerment. It has the ability to change a bad attitude to, I'm air quotes here, bad attitude to a positive attitude. And it's been able to shift perspective. Gardening allows us to set goals and then asks us to make steps to achieve them. So if you're going to garden, there are things you need to do to take care of it. You have to make sure you're watering it, making sure you're checking if there are any pests or any bugs that are bothering it. So you have to be in tune when you choose to garden and you want to actually reap some rewards from it. You got to pay attention. And so all of that kind of leads us to plugging into something that is a little bit bigger than ourselves. So the garden allows us to step outside of ourselves and take care of something else that is living, and have this relationship with those plants. The garden is a kind of like a small scale example of the cycles of life and death and how that is very natural. And we get to watch something grow from a seed and go all the way into being a tomato vine. And then, when the frost comes, because we're in Kentucky, that tomato plant's going to die back. And so if we follow that all the way through, we watch that life cycle. Gardening has been known to reduce stress, depression, and anxiety just by being in the garden and in the act of gardening itself. It has many physical benefits for our body as well as psychological. A lot of folks who garden look at it as like a meditative practice, but you're still moving. So sometimes we think of meditation as, maybe we're just sitting still and our eyes are closed, and maybe that's like the mainstream view of it, but you can actively be moving as you meditate. And so doing a repetitive action like weeding or hoeing or just transplanting, all are forms of meditation. Gardening is a source of connection to things that are larger than ourselves. The nice thing about gardening is sometimes we get some instant gratification by doing something like weeding, right? Let's say we have our corn in and we go through and we weed it and we step back and we're like, oh, that looks so good. And my corn is so happy. It's no longer competing with these weeds. And so that's like an immediate, satisfactory thing. And then it also asks us to be patient at the same time, right? Because, okay, we weeded that and it looks great, but we're not going to get corn until July. So that, it's this give and take in that balance of life that sometimes things happen instantly and sometimes things take months or years, etc. Just generally, gardening can increase the feeling of well-being and just having a well-balanced life. When you have a garden, you have to work hard to maintain it. No matter how big it is, right? You have to pay attention. It has to be on your mind. And it can also ask us to step outside our comfort zone. So a lot of folks will say to me, well, I don't know how to garden, so I'm not going to because I won't be able to grow it. Well, I do not have a degree in agriculture. And most of my gardening skills have come from being self-taught over the last decade, and trying and failing a bunch of times. I had to step outside my comfort zone. I had to be humbled. I had to rely on folks that know more than me. I had to make new friends because I'm talking about plants, and I didn't grow up in a family that grew a garden. So I don't have that, background from when I was 5 years old with my grandma. So I have all of these friends that are a wide variety of ages. And I had to build that because I needed to learn and I needed mentors. And I would just say that something, and I'm going to share another picture really quick. Something that's just really wonderful about gardening is that it just reminds you of the everyday joys of life. So the other day I was planting, and this butterfly is actually sitting on a broccoli transplant, I believe. And I was there and I was ready to put it in, and this, I believe this is a kite swallowtail, but it landed right on the transplant. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not doing that right now. And so I just kind of sat there and I stared at the butterfly, and the butterfly stared at me, and it slowed me down and it made me be present and be where my feet are. And then, it decided to fly off, and that was the end of our meeting. But it was just one of those beautiful things that, when we sit in, I sit inside a lot because a lot of my work is on the computer. And so when I do get to get out in the garden, it reminds me of so many, like, the joys of the natural world and the little everyday miracles that happen. And as long as we slow down and pay attention, we're going to see them. And I just think that gardening can do that for all of us. So in my extension role, where I work most with therapeutic gardens, is we have a recovery garden program that is in, I think, 8 or 9 counties now. And we have extension agents and assistants that work with folks that are going through substance use recovery. And they have raised bed gardens. A lot of them are raised bed gardens. And the benefits that we've seen over the last 3.5 years since this program has started has just been wonderful. Stories of, building self-confidence, stories of breaking through stigma, stories of having fun when you're in a semi-serious setting sometimes, and just being able to poke fun at one another. And, somebody's like squeals because there's a worm, right? And they're not super into insects. And then somebody, so this camaraderie that happens. We just have so many beautiful stories through that. And so it's been wonderful to watch in my personal life how I benefit, and then watch through that program how these folks that are going through this time in their life where they're going through a huge transformation have able to really benefit by just getting their hands in the dirt and working together, and then getting to eat the food that they've grown or enjoy the flowers, etc. So I could go on and on. Gardening is my passion, but just know that start where you are with what you have, and just lean on folks and lean on extension to help you grow, and know that any garden can be therapeutic. So thank you for having me.
Wow, Jann, thank you. After everyone gets done talking, I just go, wow, oh my gosh. And those photos that you shared too were amazing. The mountains in the background or the hills in the background, it just looks like a very peaceful place to do your work and to feel that passion for sure. Well, our final speaker today is Mike Meyer. And so some of you may know Mike as one of our area extension directors, and others may know him as a freelance photographer. And today, Mike is coming to talk to us today as a freelance photographer, and about ways in which he finds photography as a source of healing, but also to share how that finding photography or using photography to find a subject and to look at the value in details, kind of like Jann was even talking about with that butterfly, clarifying your direction through these challenging moments in life, and how we can do all this through the power of photography. So thank you, Mike, for sharing more about what you do and how this can be healing.
Yes, thank you, Amy. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to try to fly through some of these, but please, you all stop. I've got a little bit of an interactive part in here, so I'm going to have to ask you to use the chat if you can here in a few seconds, and I'm going to get you to put in a number as we go through this. But I want to wrap us up just a little bit about first saying that we're all on such the same page. I just listened to Alistair and Allison and Erin and Jann, and just hearing them talk about staying connected in yourself and finding your own feeling and dealing with that emotion as you go in those different ways. And I think you're going to see the same message from me when we talk about photography and just focusing on your subject and adding some clarity and creativity as we go along. So I'm going to show you some pictures, and we're going to talk about a few things real quick and get you on about your lunch, I know. But the first thing I want to mention is just let's get some basics out of the way for photography, just when we're talking about some keywords that you might hear me mention. The first is subject. So if you hear somebody say subject in photography, they're talking about what draws your attention when you see the picture. Okay, so what do you automatically think about when you're looking at the photo? What comes to mind first? And that's that focus. And then when you mention focus and clarity, it's the most clear and sharp part of the image. So in this case, I'll give you an example. This is my 3-year-old. I have 4 kids, 1, 3, 5, and 7. This is my 3-year-old Tamsin, and she just had her birthday not too long ago. But the focus of this picture is, of course, her face, in which when we do portrait photography, that's what you want. So the little plant in my house in the background is out of focus. The cupcakes, you can tell they're cupcakes, but that's not where I want your mind to go to first. It's to her, the excitement, the joy, the smile that you see on her face, right away in that moment, and being able to capture that emotion at that time. And then the last point of view. And when you think about point of view in photography, it's the rules, it's the angle, it's the perspective, it's your point of view, how you see that particular moment or that emotion or that image. And we're going to apply those to some of those here coming up in just a second. So the first part is, let's talk about photography as a subject. Let's put it into practice. Just a simple wasp here, as you see in the picture. But if we're talking about a subject, I would hope you would agree that the subject is the wasp. Okay, it's sitting on a leaf, but I've kind of taken it in a way that gives you a little bit of context, but it doesn't distract from the image. Of course, easily you could step away and you could take a picture just standing up of the whole bush, and maybe eventually you'll get around to seeing that there's a wasp on one of the leaves, or you could kind of get in close and really slow down and pay attention and find the uniqueness and the details that are right in front of you. And in this case, if we're looking for focus, what's in focus, it's the head of this wasp, it's the eyes, it's the mouth parts, it's those integral parts that you don't see. You just you feel the stinger right when it catches you off guard. But for the most part, there's a lot of really cool things going on there. And stopping and seeing that perspective, taking a moment to get in closer and not standing far away, but putting yourself in a position where you could see some of those unique things in life that you could see here. So then let's talk just a tad bit about the subjects. When I say subjects in photography, it's just like we talked about earlier with the creative writing and storytelling and gardening and different things. Photography is unique because there's so many different aspects and ways that you could find something that interests you, okay? Whether it be portraits, weddings, families, senior pictures, baby pictures, whatever it is. Nature, animals, insects, landscapes, sports, community events. I listed several of them there, and just generally being creative, whether with lighting or black and white or mood setting, those different things. So I'm going to ask you in just a second here, pull up your chat box, and I'm going to go through some pictures. And basically what I want, I've taken all these but one. And I just want you to put in if it is an interesting subject for you. One is it's low interest, and I don't mean quality or anything like that. You can hate on my pictures when I'm okay with it. I've taken some really bad ones in my day too. But just, does it interest you? Does it touch you in your mind or your heart? Or does it trigger an emotion or something or anything like that? You can put in the chat box 1 through 5. We'll start right here with this young lady. I took a senior picture last week of her, a young lady in Harrison County, and to graduate. And as you all know, it was kind of an interesting year with not being a part of their class and those normal experiences they have, but just getting to talk to her during that time and doing some senior pictures. It's really unique. And when we talk about value, of course, to some, it's a cool picture, but it is a senior picture. To her mom, though, this is probably invaluable, right? It's probably worth a lot of money, and to herself, it's really cool to see. What about a wedding? A lot of people think of weddings, and what I like is it's a high pressure moment for me as a photographer. In a lot of ways, it stresses me out because there's moments in a wedding that as a photographer, you'll never get back. You'll never get the first kiss, the first glance, coming down the aisle, all those things. But the neat part about weddings is it brings an emotion of life and starting together. And I get to see the look in their eye and the couple and just the raw emotion that you feel at a wedding when they're starting together. And that's really interesting to me, certainly. What about candid shots? It could be people, it could be animals, it could be public. It doesn't matter. This is my favorite. My favorite part about taking pictures is finding something unique. You would think this pig is singing. I just went to a young girl's farm, and this was actually a senior photo shoot for a graduating senior. And they had pigs and everything else. And I just saw them over there, and I was like, I'll be back. We got to take a break for a second. I just wanted over here to see if I could find something. And, it makes you pay attention to the different parts of what's going on. Landscape photography. This is, I love to hike. This is at Red River Gorge. And you see, many of you have seen probably several times of just where you have tree roots that are growing around rocks to get to dirt, okay, to support themselves. And they're just, it looks like they're growing right through the rock. And that was the case here. But instead of just standing back and taking a picture, just setting up my tripod and getting a unique point of view where you're looking up and looking to the sky and seeing all those details and just stopping for a second and just enjoying what you're seeing that too many times we pass over, okay? And that's what's really neat about photography. It could be wildlife, a lot of birders out there. Springtime is an excellent time because we got so many species of birds that pass through Kentucky and you don't even know it. You walk out of your house, you get in your car, you see them, you hear them, but you don't know what they are and you don't stop to see. But we have a lot that are here just for a couple of weeks and then they're gone. And, you know, this is a unique opportunity to put out a feeder in your backyard, put out some bird feed, put out a rotten log or anything, a little thing of water. And you'll notice very quick in just a couple of days what you'll see come through, and being able to photograph that. You'll see orioles that are only passing through for a couple of weeks, or just, you know, redbirds and cardinals and blue jays and just typical stuff that are, they're nuisance some, but you'll get to see a lot of cool stuff, and it leads you to research. Look it up online, look it up, see what their story is and where they're from. And it just brings excitement to the situation and stop and find in detail. These groundhogs have been tearing up my barn at my house for years, and they aggravate the heck out of me. But I decided I was taking a moment. I was going to try to catch them in a photo. And so I sat out behind these trees for an hour. And finally, I caught two of them come out of a hole underneath my barn. And I got some cool pictures of them when I was doing that. Jann talked about garden. I love to garden. This was a picture of the very first green tomato we had last year in the garden. And so instead of just walking by, my kids love working in the garden. You know, I said, trying to get a cool picture, but in this opportunity, it's just a green tomato. But when you get in closer and you see the details and the intricacies of life, and you see these little small hairs on the stem and all these different things that we just look over and we take for granted too many times, but are right in front of us. Somebody sliding to third base at a midway baseball game last week where I went to go watch a friend that plays for them, and it was a win or miss the tournament type deal. This young man, as you can see, barely made it to third base, the gloves in the hand, he's coming at it, and it was just a really bang play. The very next batter comes up, hits this runner home. Midway gets to go to the tournament this week. And so it's the little things like that that just, you just freeze in an instance with a camera, and it just brings back memories. It brings back memories and thoughts and things like that. This is the one that I didn't take. This is a landscape picture here. And the title of it is called The Rhine 2. And it's a river. And the cool part about it is that it might be interesting to you, it might be not. But this, up until just a few years ago, this was the highest selling photograph ever at an auction, $4.5 million. Okay. And I look at it, and to me, and the reason why I say this is because, you know, I feel like I could recreate the same picture if I was there, but to me, it's not 4.5 million worth. It's cool. But it means something to somebody else. Okay. It means something to somebody. And that's the interesting part. And photography can do that to you. Photography can, you know, maybe animals or birds don't do anything, but people do, or moments or emotions or time or landscape or a place or a garden. We all have a different subject. And, you know, when we're talking about grief and loss, it's a matter of finding that subject and being able to explore it and just take it for granted. But so some of y'all have 4.5 million sitting around. You can purchase something just like this. The cool part about photography I like is being able to enjoy the details and preserve the moment, is what I call it. I can't tell you what I had for breakfast 2 weeks ago, but as a photographer, I can almost bring back not only what I was doing when I take a picture, but the things that led up to it there before and after, and the emotions and the feelings. Every time I can take a picture of my kids, and, you know, I forget that day, but as soon as I see that picture that I took, it reminds me of what they were doing before and after. These are just some robins that I saw yesterday that are making a nest in a pine tree in my front yard. And I remember this is cool. And seeing their eyes develop and they're not open yet. And you see that soft down that's on them and stuff like that. That's all really neat. But what I remember most about this was the fact that my two girls come running up the driveway. I was playing baseball in the backyard with my kids, and my two girls come with Ronan, my son. The girls come run up there, Dad, get down here. You got to see it. There's birds down here and that type of stuff. So that's what I see in my mind when I see this picture, and I see them. And then I also see this, and this is really cool. But I see them, and it brings me joy because it lets me remember that image and that moment in my mind, because otherwise I'd forget it, you know, and photography can do that to you. real quick story, and I know I'm running short, but my grandparents, they retired and moved to a retirement home in Florida, retirement village in Florida. It's called the Villages, and I call it like, it's like Kings Island for people that are retired. I mean, they're golf cart, they golf, they got card clubs, and you can go swimming and in town and everything else. My dad is getting ready to retire, and he's debating, him and my stepmom, about either moving down there or somewhere closer to where we are with the kids. And I remembered, and I reminded him of a situation he told me about 3 years ago. And he said, you know what, my grandfather is kind of depressed a lot of times. And I was like, why is that? And he said, there's never anything new. They're like at Kings Island, but there's never anything new. There's not a new baby in a retirement village. There's not a new marriage. There's not, matter of fact, what you hear, you make friends, but a lot of times it's the end of life is what happens with that. And it's always the end of life. And, it kind of depresses them at times because they don't see a baby. They don't hear a new story. They don't hear anything. And I just told my dad, I reminded him of that. And I said, look, you're making a choice. Why don't you surround yourself with life then? Why don't you stay up here around grandkids or this? This is my sister-in-law on the left who just had her fourth not too long ago, Aspen. That's my wife on the right with Cohen, our fourth. And, this is what you get in ball games and grandparents' days and practices and weekend meals. Why don't you choose that and surround yourself with life and enjoyment? And just like, Alistair mentioned earlier, grief is not linear. It is up and down. It's all over the place. And so it's and how we're going to deal with that is, what do we surround ourselves with? Have we found a topic? Have we found an interest? Have we found a hobby? And all of us are going to have grief, and it's never going to be perfect. So it's how can we surround ourselves with life and things and challenges that are going to help us continually remember the good and the intricacies of life and those details that we talked about in there. As you can see, this is a $4.5 million picture to me. My nieces are on the left. This is my sister-in-law's kids, the four on the left. Mine are the four on the right, mine and my wife. And, they're all very short. And if those of you that know us, the oldest two are 9 days apart. The second two are 30 days apart. The next two are 2 months. I mean, they're all super close, all the way down to the two new ones there in the middle. And but this is something that's of interest to me and can be of interest for you. It could be landscape. It could be animals. It could be leading to a hike that you stop and find wildflowers on the ground that you want to find, not just the flower. Don't stand up and take the picture, but lay on the ground, physically lay on the ground and see the sepals and the petals and the pollen and get something close that way you could really enjoy when you go home. You can enjoy those details that you saw that you might have missed otherwise. I'm going to leave you with this one and then we're done. I apologize for going a little long. These are two friends of mine that just got engaged. Kyle is engaging in Maggie, and they've been dating for about 2 years. They just got engaged the other day. They asked me to come. He was going to surprise her and take some pictures of their engagement at her grandmother's house when she got back into town. The unique thing about them is Maggie, about 2 years ago, they started dating. Their first date was actually, they kid around a bit now, but was to a funeral visitation. But Maggie lost her grandfather a little over 2 years ago to cancer. And then like 2 months later, she lost her dad to cancer. And so Kyle, they were friends before, but he decided to accompany her and to the funeral home. They'd been talking a little bit at the time and to visitation and all those things. And now here 2 years later, they're being engaged. They're going to get married in October. And it was unique because I love the picture on the right. That's raw emotion to me. Okay. That's you could see her clench her grandmother's shoulder. You could see how the cloth is moved. You could see the emotion in her eyes and those types of things. And for me, it was a moment of the clashing emotions, kind of, if you would say, like, between thinking about her father passing away and her grandfather, but also being engaged and happy. And, that's honestly, look, we're real people. This is how you deal with grief. You're not going to run from it. It's going to get you. Emotions are real. And it's how we surround ourselves with life, how to deal with it. And, I love this instance for me, and photography brings me back to this moment, and it lets me create my own story, but also find out about people around the situation. And it's what we have here. So, really cool, and something I encourage you to think about. But I just want to reiterate a few things. You can do photography with absolutely anything. It could be a point and shoot. It could be your cell phone. It doesn't matter. If you get fancy later, you can get a camera, like I do. It doesn't matter. If you want some suggestions on something to get, I can help you out with that. Whatever it is, I just encourage you to find something, find your subject, whatever it is that interests you, enjoy the details, get close, get really close to the subject, get rid of all the confusion, get rid of all the clutter that's in there, and just enjoy those details and sit down and remember that moment. Preserve the moment and surround yourself with life more than anything. So that's all I have. I really appreciate it. Amy, I'll turn it back over to you. Please email me if you have any questions or anything you would like to discuss further.
Great. Wow. This was awesome. Totally exceeded my expectations and was like a podcast. I found myself laughing at times, crying at times. I got emotional. I got energized to go do something. And then I had these visions of putting all of our panelists together in Jann's garden. I thought, can you even imagine the fireworks that could happen with all of you? Alistair's dogs would be running around. Erin would be playing music. Mike would be taking pictures. Allie would be capturing this all on paper. I mean, really, it would be an incredible afternoon for sure that we'd all benefit from just watching. So thank you so much for all these great ideas, inspiration. And that was really our goal with this. Like everyone has said, through grief, there are a variety of creative outlets that can help us really find beauty. I think everyone talked about that, beauty and good in every day. You can find something that's bigger than yourself. You can get lost in the flow of something that you feel so passionate about or passionate over. I think these creative outlets also give us something to look forward to anticipate. It can help us create connections. It can help us create bonds with other people or people with similar interests. And I also think Alistair hit it right at the very beginning too. It provides you with purpose. We do a lot with actually animals and children and plants in nursing homes. It was a big movement for a long time. If we can give residents a reason to get out of bed in the morning, even if it's just to water a plant or to feed the fish, that can be really powerful. And I certainly felt that again today listening to our panel talk. I also just want to wrap up and say that everyone has some degree or some measure of creativity. And so I hope that you felt that today too, and don't feel overwhelmed that you have to pick up a paintbrush or you have to take as awesome pictures as Mike takes and shows us. There's different ways in which we can be creative and what's most meaningful to you. And so we encourage you to try it. Try something that motivates you and moves you. And if you don't like it, try something else. That's what's cool about being human and having those opportunities. But again, it's really all about our own resourcefulness and willing to try and do things and to get lost in something that can be bigger than ourselves, even if it's just for a temporary moment in time. So again, thank you to the panel. Let me quick look at the chat to make sure that we don't have any questions. If you do have a question and want to unmute yourself, please do at this time. But again, our goal here was to look at the healing power of creative outlets. And I think we did a wonderful job capturing that and sharing that today. So thank you, everybody.